Let's go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I know there are people from all over the world with us today, which is great, but it also creates some differences in time zones. So I know it's early for some of you, it's late for some of you. So thank you for joining us today. What I want to do is just briefly summarize what the WARM program is all about. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for your interest in the program. Those of you who know me, I think I've discussed with you that a good friend of mine who runs this program at UVU, and can you help connect us with some people who might be potential students from around the world? So that's why I've been doing this outreach, just to help him. They'll be starting their third year next fall. What we'll do is we'll go through a brief program review, some of the key elements about who the students are that they're looking for, the kinds of students, the structure of the program, some notes about the curriculum, how it works, the tuition and costs, which I know is a big issue for many students, particularly international students. So I've got some information that I hope will be helpful. And then what are the next steps, how to apply? And then, of course, I'm sure many of you will have questions, and we'll try to answer those. If I don't have the answer, I'll make a note and then get back to you or the group with hopefully an answer to that question. I hope all of you have spent some time on the website that I built, uvuwarm.com, which has essentially all the information that we're going to go through today, but I think is a good focal point for people who are interested in the program. Gives some good visuals, what the program is all about, who the employers are, the different resorts, what Park City and that area is all about, some specifics about the curriculum that we don't need to go into today. So I tried to include as much content as possible to try to anticipate the questions that potential students might have. So please spend some time with this. Encourage people that you have contact with to go to the website, spend some time on each page so that all of their questions can be answered. First, let me show you a quick video to get things warmed up here. This is a video that I posted on the website. This will give you an idea of what the Park City area is about, what some of the resorts look like that students will work at. And keep in mind that Park City is a 4-season resort, so that's why the program goes all year round. The WARM program by Utah Valley University is a unique experiential learning pathway toward building a successful career in the dynamic world of hospitality. It's designed as a 5-semester bachelor's degree for juniors and seniors. We'll talk more about that. WARM students study as a cohort, meaning they stay with the same group of students through the whole program. They have classes with them, they have activities together, and it's a small classroom environment while they work when they're not in school at high-end mountain resorts in beautiful Park City, Utah. So we're going to talk in more detail about some of these elements here to make sure everybody understands what it's all about. For those who may not be familiar, and there are many who will be watching this video that don't really know where we're talking about, here's a map of the United States that shows Utah here in the west. And then if you blow up Utah into a larger picture, you have Salt Lake City, which is the capital of Utah, Provo, which is where BYU, Brigham Young University, is based, and also nearby to Utah Valley University's main campus, which is in Orem, which is the neighboring city to Provo. And then Park City is on the other side of the mountains from Salt Lake City and Provo. So you have to go up over the mountains into the ski resort areas to get to Park City. So that's a little bit about the geography to make sure everybody kind of knows where we're talking about here. Here's a collage of images about Park City. It originally was a mining town. They mined silver there, and some of the mines are all closed, of course, but you can still visit some of the old mining places. But now it's become a tourism-related 4-season resort. It's famous for its skiing, There are two major resorts there, and Park City is the largest, and then you have Deer Valley, which is also right there in that same valley, across the valley from Park City. And some of the resorts that students work for are in Deer Valley as well as Park City. But you can see they have wonderful skiing, beautiful resorts. They have a kind of a cool downtown area with a lot of old cowboy town, mining town architecture. It's a four-season resort. People visit all year there. They go hiking, mountain biking, fishing, other kinds of activities in the area, as well as the skiing and snow sports in the winter. The WARM program is based at a campus that UVU built. And this is a beautiful facility, very nice building. And the WARM program is the main tenant in this building. They are the main program that's in this building. There are some other community-based programs that happen in the building there, but it's basically the WARM building. And it's about 15-minute drive from downtown Park City. So you drive across another small valley where the campus is located, which is one of the reasons we'll talk a little bit more about this. Most students really need to have a car to be able to get around in this area. It's kind of spread out. Now, there is some public transportation available that's improving. And so if you live near the campus here, you would definitely need a car. But if you lived in Park City, right in Park City, you probably would not need a car because they have public transportation that goes around the Park City area, including to the resorts where you would work. In order to get to campus, from Park City, you would either need a car or get a ride with one of your classmates who lives in that area. So we could talk more about that. But as I mentioned, public transportation is improving. Since the program is new and they only have about 25 students in the program right now, it's relatively small. But as the program grows, they may also be able to provide some like a shuttle van back and forth. But all of those things are still being developed. So if we can help the program get big enough, it may give them the resources to be able to have shuttle transportation back and forth between the campus and Park City. So let's talk about the student categories. The reason that I mentioned this is, if you remember, I mentioned that this is a program for juniors and seniors, for upperclassmen. In order to qualify for the WARM program, you have to fall into one of these three categories. You have to have completed all of your general education credits at a college or university, either in the US or in another country. You have to have an associate's degree from any other university, again, either domestically or internationally, or you have earned or will soon earn a bachelor's degree in any major. You don't have to be a hospitality major to come into the WARM program. Okay, any questions on that? So we have these three categories. Either you have to complete your general education credits, or you have an associate's degree, or you have a bachelor's degree, or we'll soon be completing those requirements. Let me show you this a little differently graphically here. The WARM program does not include the freshman and sophomore years of college. The WARM program is specifically for students who've already done their freshman and sophomore years or have an associate degree or general education credits completed. Then they transfer into the WARM program. Now, that's also true for students at Utah Valley University who are in their freshman or sophomore years. So if you have somebody who's studying at UVU on their main campus in Orem, Utah, and they finish their general education, or they get an associate's degree, or even if they get a bachelor's degree at UVU, they can transfer into the WARM program. And the same is true for students from any other university or college that is a legitimate school where they can transfer those credits. So this is kind of confusing, but I want to make sure everybody is clear on this. Does anybody have any questions about how this works? It's for juniors and seniors, and students transfer their credits into the program.
So I had a question.
Yes.
I think we did talk a little bit about it. I messaged you about it because I finished my bachelor's degree.
Right.
So you say that the warm program is 4 semesters, right?
It's five semesters.
5 semesters. So with in regards to that, getting a bachelor's degree, do you know if they do transfer over some like classes that you've already done, or do you have to go through the whole 5 semesters?
That's a good question. Let me come right back to that, but just add this one little point here. So if a student does not fit into any of those three categories, then they can simply apply to UVU as an incoming freshman, a new student, or a transfer student. And then after they've completed their general ed requirements at UVU or gotten an associate's degree, then they can transfer into the warm program. But you asked a really good question. Okay. Let me come back to that, okay?
Yeah,
Because
that's fine.
I've got a slide here that talks about that. So it's a really good
Uh-huh.
question. It's an important question. The simple answer is if you already have a bachelor's degree and you want to seek a second bachelor's degree in this program, yes, they will accept some of your credits into the warm program and waive certain courses that they teach. All right. So we'll talk about that more in just a moment. Here's how the program is structured in terms of the semesters and the work study elements. So it's a 5 semester bachelor's degree where students work as paid interns at high-end resort partners. Now, the word interns is important because if you're an F1 student, an international degree with an F1 um, visa, you can only work on campus, right? But because this is classified as an internship, an F1 student can work at these resorts while they're in school. Okay, we can talk more about this later, but that's important to note. So this is the way the 20 months work. So it's a 5 semester program. The 20 months are structured in the following way. During the busy season for the Park City resorts, which is winter, okay, the December holiday break and spring semester, you work full time, 35 or more hours, depending on what the resort wants, and then you study part time at the Wasatch campus at UVU. During the fall, the first semester of the year, and then later in the year, during the summer when it's not as busy, you work part time, usually about 18 or so hours, and you study full time. So do you see how this works? During the busy periods, the ski season, basically, the winter season, you work full time and you study part time. And then during the off season, the slower season, when the skiing is closed, but people are still there at the resort, so they still need employees, but you can work part time while you study full time. That makes sense to everybody? Okay, good. Now, Ceci, here's to your question. Some warm courses or credits may be waived if you've already taken a very similar course at another school. That's the same with transferring between any university, right? If you've taken a certain course already at a particular school, you transfer, they might waive that course because you've already taken it. They don't want you to be required to take it again. So this could reduce the number of required courses and semesters to graduate. Of course, you have to provide transcripts, and those credit transfers are reviewed and approved by the warm program director. This is the same for any kind of university transfer, this process. However, transfer students must complete at least 30 credit hours at UVU to graduate from warm. So you have to take at least 30 credits from the warm program in order to get your second bachelor's degree. Now, in the case of somebody who already has a hospitality related degree, you may be able to waive a lot of the classes because you've already taken many of them. However, you can't waive all of the classes because you have to take at least 30 credit hours, which means for somebody who graduated with a hospitality related degree previously, they would probably have to repeat a few classes that they'd already taken because you have to take at least 30 credits. However, the curriculum at the warm program is a little bit different from some other hospitality programs, including at BYU Hawaii. So there are some classes that are required there that we didn't require at BYU Hawaii, and the opposite is true. So it's not completely redundant, but just keep in mind, this is basically how it works. If you bring credits from another bachelor's degree, they will review those and they will waive as many of those courses as they can. But at the end of that review of your transfer credits, you still have to take at least 30 credits at UVU to graduate in the WARM program. Okay.
I do have a question regarding the
Yes.
credits. Because in the slides it mentioned that we have to require to take at least 30 credits at UVU.
Yes. Yes.
Does it mean that for example that we have doing the WARM program and I have transferred most of my credits and only need to take 30 credits. Does it mean that I'll have to graduate in WARM program earlier, or will have to take the 5 semester throughout the program?
Well, I don't know. This really depends. It's a good question. It really depends on each student and their situation. For some students, it might mean that they could completely waive the first semester and maybe the second semester. And they would only have to do the final 3 semesters. For others, it might be a little bit different. In other words, you might be able to start the program later than the other classmates would be starting in August, starting the fall semester. So you might be able to waive that whole first semester and then start in January instead of August. So again, it really depends on each individual student, their situation, how many credits are waived, when they want to start. But I want to make one point. The director of the WARM program is very flexible. He really wants to build a program. He wants additional students, and he will work with you to meet your needs in terms of how many credits are transferred, when you would start. But the bottom line is that you really need to take at least 30 credits from the WARM program in order to graduate. And then in your case, where you already have a bachelor's degree, you would have a second bachelor's degree. You would have 2. And I know one of the reasons that some students who already have a hospitality degree are interested in this is because of the work experience that you get. It really is excellent experience. It's like, an academic training or OPT kind of experience over an extended period of time where you're able to work full-time and part-time for an extended period of time with one of these resorts. And of course, if you develop a good relationship with one of these companies, many of them are international hospitality companies, which means you might be able to transfer after you finish this program, you might be able to transfer to one of their other hotels in some other part of the world. Some students have asked me, well, I already have a bachelor's degree. Can I pursue a second bachelor's degree, get an F1 visa in order to do that? Typically, that's allowed. You can have more than one. You can have a second bachelor's degree with an F1 visa. But there are some things you need to keep in mind. First of all, of course, you have to be a full-time student as defined by the university in order to get and keep the F1. As I understand it, the second bachelor's degree should be related to your first degree to show that you're advancing in your academic experiences. And I think in this case, if your original degree did not include very much, a small amount or not any work experience, this could be a way to apply for and get approved a second degree, because you're saying this is going to give me critical work experience that's going to help me advance in my career that I didn't get in my previous degree. You might be able to use a valid current F1 visa if you already have one to get a second degree, but you would have to apply for an extension through both schools. You would have to coordinate that extension of your F1 degree through both your current and future school, meaning UVU. If your visa expired, your F1 visa, you would go through the process again to apply for a new F1 visa at a consulate or an embassy in your country. And then with optional practical training, OPT, which is the 12 months that you can work full-time after you finish all of your courses. If you took any OPT during your first bachelor's degree on your F1 visa, that is subtracted from the amount of time that you would have at the warm program to do OPT. So if you did a first bachelor's degree and you did no OPT after you finish school, then you would still have 12 months later to work for these resorts in Park City as a part of the warm program. If you use 6 months of your OPT in your first bachelor's program, and then you transferred to the warm program, you would still have 6 months of OPT available after you finish all your coursework. Okay, is that clear to everybody? This is for an F1 student, which is what most international students come to school on. BYU Hawaii is the odd exception. Most of them are J1 students, which brings me to the next slide. If you already received an undergraduate degree on the J1 visa and you want the second degree, you might be able to extend and transfer your J1 from one school to another if it's still valid. As you all know, if you're on a J1 visa for a bachelor's program, after you finish all of your classes, you have 30 days that J1 visa is still valid, and then it expires and you have to go back home. But during that gap period, if you're able to transfer your J1 from one university to the second university, in many cases, it can be extended, but you have to coordinate that very carefully between both universities, and the timing is critical. Your J1 must still be valid. If the J1 has expired, then you have to go through the process again and probably apply for an F1 visa, because UVU typically does not issue J1 visas. They only work with F1 visas, like most of the universities in America. Now, keep in mind, for some J1 students, like Jenny, for example, she had to go home for 2 years and stay there until she could apply for a new visa. So these rules are kind of tricky. I am not an expert on educational visas. So if you have questions about this, the best thing to do is to talk to and coordinate with either your current school and or UVU and their international student office. I can help you get connected there if you need more help on that particular issue, but I just wanted to mention this. These are the basics that you need to be aware of. For any particular student that has a certain situation or question, we would need to get you in touch with the right people to make sure that that you know exactly how to go through this, because as you all know, the details and the timing and getting the right forms and connecting with the right people is really critical when you're talking about these kinds of international student visas. So we have to make sure that you do it right. All right, tuition and costs. This is a big question. As it says on the website, the total tuition for 5 semesters is about $17,000 if you're a Utah resident, meaning you have established already Utah residency, which usually takes about a year. And it's about $25,000 for non-residents. That would include international students. Now, students may receive up to $1,000 in tuition reimbursement from their employer every semester. That's part of the agreement that the WARM program has with these resorts, is that if you value our students as employees, then you need to contribute to their education. So at the end of the semester, they give you $1,000 in tuition reimbursement to help you pay for your education and other expenses. Students may qualify for the financial aid that's available to all undergraduate UVU students, but most of that, if not all of that, is for domestic students. It's likely not available for international students. However, if you're interested, you might want to contact the financial aid office. I've given you a link on the website to their contact information, just to ask if there are any support programs available for international students. But I don't believe they are, because most of these are federal US programs for American students. And the good news here is that the resort partners pay these students well. They have agreed to pay at least 16 hours after tips, okay? But the average the students earn is about $25 an hour. Some students at higher end resorts that have really good tippers are making $30 or $35 an hour. So the wage is very good, which means that after you get into school, you can cover your tuition and all of your living expenses from the money that you're making as an intern, which means that by the time you graduate, you have no debt. That's really important because nobody wants to go back to the Philippines or to Fiji or to Guatemala with a lot of school debt where they're not making as much money in their home country, and it's very difficult to pay that debt off, right? So the program recognizes this situation, and the reason that this works is because these resorts really want our students as employees and potential long-term employees in their system, so they're willing to pay money. They pay a market wage. They pay the same money that they pay for somebody else in the same position. Now let's look at this a different way, because it's important that everybody understands that if you apply for an F1 visa, you have to demonstrate that you have enough money to pay for all of your tuition and all of your living expenses during the entire 20 months, which is a big number. Many international students, as you know, they accomplish this by finding a sponsor, a family member, a friend, a former employer, people who are supportive, or some other resource that provides a statement of support and says, here is the money in my bank account, and I'm going to support this student and guarantee their education. That's the way an F1 visa works. I think most of you are aware of that criterion for the F1 program. Now, let's break this down in terms of how the cost works, because I think this will help you see what we're talking about. So for an international student or a non-Utah resident, the semester tuition is just over $5,000. Now, for rent and utilities and things like this, for about 4 months, it's about $4,000. Now, I'm assuming that you have a roommate, that you're sharing an apartment with somebody, about half of the cost of the apartment. That's my assumption here. And on the website, I've given some information there with links to apartment complexes where people can see what's available and how much it is, the apartment complexes in that area. Now, to operate a car with gas, insurance, food, and kind of other expenses, I'm assuming about $1,000 for that 4-month period. So about $10,000 is the typical cost for a semester program of 3 to 4 months. Now, if you look at the wages, based on that $25 average, you're going to make about $14,000 if you're working 35 hours a week during those busy periods. Obviously, if you're working only 18 or 19 or 20 hours during the slower period, it would be less than this. And then keep in mind, the employer is going to give you $1,000 at the end of the semester. So you're actually making about $5,000 more per semester than your living costs. Okay, so you have a net gain that you can save there. The reason that it's important that students save that money during the busy seasons, the winter season when they're working full time, is because when they're working part-time, they need to take some of those savings to help pay for their living expenses during the time when they're going to school full-time, but they're only working part-time. Oh, I should mention one other thing. This does not include purchasing the car. This is just paying for the gas and the maintenance and the insurance and things like that. If you're working 18 or 19 or 20 hours a week during the slow season, you would probably make less than $10,000 during that time period. But again, if you're saving a little bit of money during the time when you're working full-time, then you can pay for those expenses during the slow time. So the expenses are pretty steady through the year, but your wages go up and down a little bit depending on the season. So when you're making more money, you need to save a little bit so that when you're making less money, you have enough money to pay your rent and your food and all those kinds of things. Now, typical financial needs for the first semester, when you first come, you're going to have to pay tuition for the first semester. $5,000. You're going to have to pay about $1,000 if you're sharing an apartment for the first month's rent and the deposit. You're probably going to need a few $100s more just to buy things and to pay for transportation and whatever it is that you're doing. The vehicle, the car is to be determined. It really depends on the situation. If you're sharing a car with somebody, if you want to buy a car, a cheap used car, or if you have some other form of transportation, right? A scooter or something like that that you can use during the non-winter months. So I didn't put anything there. That the student will have to kind of figure out how much they need depending on what their plans are. Now, the question is, how do you come up with that money? That's a lot of money for some people in different countries. Some students borrow those funds from family or friends or other sources from a financial institution, or they take out a credit card or something like that. And then they repay that amount, that loan, throughout the first school year. Because as you saw, you can make more money than your living expenses. So you might have some extra money that you can pay back that first semester amount. That's a big chunk of money that you're going to have to pay when you first come. Now, I will tell you that I've been talking with the WARM program director about some alternatives here, finding some creative ways to help provide loans through the program for that first semester, because that will help students lower their need for money when they first come, and then they can pay back that loan to the school over time. But we haven't figured that out yet. So for right now, the student has to come up with that money to get started in school. But again, I just want to make the point that during the school year, while they're working, they're making enough money to be able to pay that loan back, or that whatever money that they borrowed from friends or family or a bank or a credit card or whatever it is. Now, some important dates here. Application deadlines. If you're a domestic transfer student, meaning you have already met your general education requirements, you have an associate's degree, or you have a bachelor's degree, and you want to apply for fall of 2024, you have until August 1st to be able to do that. If you're an international transfer student that wants to come into the WARM program with an associate's degree or bachelor's degree, or you've completed your general education, you have until July 1st. Now, those are deadlines. I would suggest that you start that process much sooner than this, because you're going to have to get approval from the university, the I-20 form that you need when you apply for your visa. You need to save the money. There's a lot of things that need to happen before you come in August that are going to take months. So if a student is interested in coming into the program, I suggest they begin the process immediately so that they can get ahead of the timing for many of these things, particularly as it relates to visas and money. Now, there is a program orientation meeting, so the student would have to be here the week of August 18th. Classes begin August 21st. Now, one other thing that I wanted to mention here is, if you're going to apply, here is where you do that: uvu.edu/welcome. And when you get to that page, you will see different categories for application: undergraduate students, graduate students, and international students. If you're a domestic student, you would click on the undergraduate student section. It'll take you to a certain website. If you're an international student, click the international student section, and it gives you a lot of additional information about the paperwork that's needed and the timing and the language requirements and all these kinds of things. Now, you can go in and start that application today, and you can also save it and continue it as needed over time. So as you gather information and gather documents, you can continue the application. Now, when you're done and you've submitted the application, let me know, because then what I can do is get you in touch with the program director at WARM. He can help you with some more information, with some guidance about places to live. He can get you in touch with other students in the program. If you're looking for a roommate, maybe one of them is graduating, they're trying to sell a cheap car, or you can talk to somebody about how they went through the process of getting there and getting started, or what it's like to work for these companies, or whatever it is you want to know, he can get you in touch with some of these other students. He really wants to help these potential students understand how to do this, when to do it, some tips and ideas, and so on. So start the application, start it early. You can save it and continue it through the process. Let me know when you're done with that application that's submitted. Then I can get you in touch with the WARM program director. Then you can start the process of your visa application after you get accepted by the university. All of those things take a long time. So don't wait, don't put it off. Get these things started right away. Any questions? I'm sure you have questions. Let me know what they are.
Could you please repeat about the F1 visa students working on campus?
Yes. The F1 visa regulations require a student to work what they call on campus. You have to work on campus. And by the way, if an F1 student is married, their spouse, and if they have children, their children are on an F2 visa, they cannot work at all. But an F1 student has to work on campus. But in this case, because the WARM program has established a paid internship program, they call it an internship, then the F1 student can legally work off campus at these resorts because it's classified as an internship, paid internship. But that internship lasts for all 5 semesters. And then during OPT, because that's still an academic program, they can continue to work for up to a year for those resorts after they finish school.
And
Okay.
can I ask another question?
Yes, of course.
What about the BYU pathway program? Can they transfer all of their credits, and how does that work?
BYU Pathway is a university. Most of those courses are taught through BYU Idaho. And so they are legitimate university credits that can be transferred to the WARM program. So if a student has taken several pathway courses, then they would request a transcript from the pathway program, just like any other school, and they would submit that transcript with their application and it would be reviewed. If they've gotten an associate's degree through the pathway program, great, they can transfer into the WARM program. If they've gotten a bachelor's degree through the pathway program, they can also transfer. Which credits transfer and how many of those courses would be waived depends on the individual situation of the student and the courses that they've taken. But yes, the pathway courses do apply. Now, the English Connect 1, English Connect 2, I don't think those would count. But if it's the BYU Pathway Worldwide University, those courses that are taught through BYU Idaho and Ensign College, yes, those credits should transfer. By the way, you can send me an email at this address here, davidpriest56@gmail.com, if you have any follow-up questions. I'm happy to answer those questions. I'm happy to help students move along the process. This is relatively new for everybody, so there may be questions that come up that I can't answer, and if so, then I will try to find the answer.
Can I have a question?
Yes, please.
Let's suppose that I'll bring my wife,
Yes.
but she's already got a bachelor degree.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible for her to join the 5 semester program? So
Of course.
both of us can get the F1 visa and have a chance to get a job.
I believe that's the case, yes. You would have to independently apply to school as individual students, and then you would have to apply, each one of you would have to apply for your own F1 visa, just as if you were not married. Yes.
What are the jobs available at Park City? What
Good
type
question.
of job?
So there's a wide variety of jobs that are available to the WARM students. This is how it works. When you are accepted into the program and you show up for your first semester, that first week, they have a group meeting with all of the students and somebody from the human resources or management department at each of the resorts. where you meet for a few minutes with people from these different hotels and resorts. They get to know you, you get to know them, they ask questions, you ask questions. And based on your interests, based on your background, based on what they think about you, then you are offered jobs by the different schools. Most students get more than one job offer from these companies. And then you have the option of choosing this job or that job or that job, and then you go to work for them and start the employment process. The jobs that are available are across the entire spectrum of a resort operation. Food and beverage, guest services, rooms division, all these different parts of a typical hotel or resort operation are available. The hotel knows which job openings they have. So they are going to offer students jobs in the places that they need. But you may get a job offer from the Waldorf Astoria in Park City for working at the front desk. You may also get a job for working in the St. Regis Hotel in their food and beverage area. Well, depending on which job career path you're interested in, you can pick or choose which of those jobs you want. You can also change jobs during the 5 semesters. So if you start working in food and beverage and you say, hey, that's cool, but it's not really what I want to do, maybe you can go to another position either at that resort or you can transfer to a different property and get a different job. All of that is coordinated through the program director and through the employers. And by the way, these are management-oriented jobs, meaning these are typical entry-level jobs that an employer, a hotel, or resort wants to have new management track people working in. So you might work the evening shift at the front desk. You might work in a restaurant as a greeter, or you might work in the valet at the front of the hotel. You might work in the rooms division. So it's all these different jobs. And occasionally, a student will not like a job or they won't like the employer that they're working for. Then they go to the program director and say, look, I've got a challenge here. I don't really like what I'm doing. Can you help me out? And they will typically find a way to arrange for another position. So there's a lot of flexibility there.
So just to confirm, they're all entry-level jobs, right?
Typically they are. That's where they need work. It's very similar to an internship position that a BYU Hawaii student in the HTM program might have. You're not going to be a front desk supervisor. You're not going to be a restaurant manager. Those require more experience. However, if you have a lot of experience in a particular discipline or area or department that you bring to that, then there is a chance you might get a higher paying job that has more responsibility. Okay, so it's just like interviewing for any other job. Depending on what your degree is or how much experience you have in a different position, different company, you might get a slightly higher job if you bring more experience and therefore can demonstrate more value to the employer. So that's all based on your experience, your qualifications, and the needs of the employer.
I have a question. Since like you mentioned that most students, warm students, will start as the entry level positions. Will there be any opportunities for them to move up into the position or like any promotion while they're working in the hotel?
Yes,
and
of
also
course.
program?
Yes, of course. You would be in a normal job progression as if you were an entry-level employee working there and not going to school. If you start out working, as I said, if you start working out working at the front desk in the evening, and you perform really high, you exceed the expectations of the employer, they may come back to you and say, "Hey, next semester we have a supervisor position at night or on a day shift or some other job that you're paid more money and you have a higher position." In other words, where you start in your first semester may not be where you finish in terms of your job level, by the time you finish your program.
Right, I see.
That all depends on you, and it depends on the organization.
So once students graduate from the program, then the goal from Park City is to hire the students as full-time employers, right?
Yes, yes.
At the
Well, actually, they are considered full-time employees.
okay, right.
And there wouldn't be any change. They would be working full-time for the next 12 months then, instead of going down to part-time during the shoulder season, the slow season.
So they work there for after graduation, they can work there up to 12 months for
Correct.
OPT, right?
Correct.
And then once
If, as I mentioned, if they're an F1 student that has not already used some of their OPT in a different program, then that would be deducted. But otherwise, they would still have 12 months to work after graduation.
I see. Well, in that case, once the OPT is over, will the company then extend another visa, or will students need to reapply for a new visa?
No, not typically. It's just your status changes. You're now in OPT status instead of being a full-time student status. So that's just a change. I believe that's a change on the I-20 form. You're still considered a student for those 12 months. So you're still on an F1 student visa, but the International Student Office would help coordinate that change. They just have to make a change in your CVIS file that notifies the government that your status has changed. But you can do that with the same F1 visa. You don't have to get a new visa.
Because this program is only for like 12 months, right? OPT has a maximum limit of 12 months. In which case, once that OPT is over, then students will have to change their visa if they want to stay and work in Park City, right? Then they will have to change to another visa that is sponsored by Park City.
Yes, that's correct. So at the end of OPT, that F1 visa expires, means you have to go back home, unless the company wants to hire you and sponsor you as a non-resident worker, and then you would get a separate visa for that. That's difficult to do sometimes, but it's possible to get a sponsored work visa through the company. But that again, that depends on what the company wants to do, what they're willing to do, and the availability of positions. Because keep in mind, the US government wants jobs like this made available first to US residents, to US citizens, legal residents. In order for a company to hire a student out of the WARM program after their OPT and their F1 visa expires, they have to submit paperwork that says, I cannot find an American citizen to work in this job. That's why I need to hire this person to come work. So it's kind of complicated. It really depends on what the company wants to do and what they're willing to do. Well, it's great to see a lot of familiar faces. Good to catch up with some of you, and nice to meet some new faces as well. I hope this has been helpful to you. And as soon as I get this edited, I will forward the link to everybody so that you can share this and the website with other people who might be interested. Please encourage them to spend time on the website and to fill out the pre-application form. That is linked there. That's not an official application to the university. It's an unofficial application that only I see. It just gives me some background information to help me understand who's interested and some background information so I can help guide them. So please encourage people to go to the website, spend time on it, and to submit that pre-application form. And then I can get in touch with them after I see that information. All right, thanks everybody. Good to see you.